The first two are about one thing, and then the last thing is about something else. The last one, next summer, is like, this is what it really is. They're building the Eye of Sauron, or maybe Jacob's Ladder, but it's being implemented under the guise of progress, sustainability, and community empowerment. This video is about the next year. It's about the Jupiter-Saturn square, which occurred last week. It occurred on August 19th. But there are three, so it's still very relevant. This is, in astrology, especially with slow-moving planets, these exact aspects aren't really like something that happens that moment or that day, although that can be very pronounced. They describe longer periods of time, because something astrology does is describe overlapping cycles of time. So this video is about the next year, and it's about Jupiter's conflicting connection with Saturn. It happens 3 times. And this particular video is about the Saturn in Pisces story in contrast to the Saturn in Aquarius story. Saturn in Aquarius was like laying down the law, the letter of the law. This is what you must do, and I have the power to make you do it, or to make everyone do it in Aquarius. Saturn in Pisces is building a structure, and it's building it in Pisces. Things happen in secret. So I might be repeating some things that I say later in the video, but managed wellness. That's what's happening right now. It's Saturn in Pisces. And so Saturn in Pisces is building a structure, a system for managed wellness moving forward. And Jupiter in Gemini is getting us hyped about the technology that runs that system, not necessarily connected to our body. And a lot of things have changed in the world. Some things, if you're like a millennial person or older, or if you just pay attention, or if you just really like Michael Pollan, you might have on your radar a company called Monsanto, who did a lot of really gnarly things that damaged biology in an attempt to create more efficient biological outputs. So you might have that and like the term GMO in your mind as like negative things. And Monsanto was absorbed by the Bayer Corporation, and Bayer is doing similar things. You should understand that the term GMO has been replaced with NBT, and it means something a little different. It's more like the CRISPR way of doing things, just going in there and editing, adding and subtracting, copy pasting, as opposed to your old-timey GMOs, which are like putting a fish gene in a potato. So these things, that language isn't really used anymore, and it's like weirder things are happening using the language that you like. So Bayer has now, it's like Bayer's agricultural division. They absorbed Monsanto, so that's what Monsanto is now, Bayer's agricultural division. And if you look at their website, they have a whole thing about regenerative agriculture, and there's a lot of weird stuff around that deserves its own separate video that I might do. That might be more for the final Jupiter-Saturn square next summer, when Jupiter is in Cancer, Saturn is in Aries. But a lot of weird, sneaky things are happening under the title of practices you're supposed to love: permaculture, wellness, supplements, mental health, energy healing, regenerative agriculture. And Bayer also has a program using proprietary technology that's like sensing the soil. So if you look at a thing called IXO blockchain, I think I talk about this in the video too. This is like a lengthy intro to the real video that's coming shortly. If you look at that video, it's on Vimeo, at least for now. That's what I'm talking about. I don't know if that's what Bayer is doing, but that's something that's being done. So yeah, things are weird. NBTs, regenerative agriculture. Regenerative agriculture is in the past not really worthy of an eyebrow raise, but that's what this video is about, is things that should get a little side eye now. And enjoy the video. It's still very relevant. It's about the next year, and I'll see you at the end. They're building the Eye of Sauron, or maybe Jacob's Ladder, but it's being implemented under the guise of progress, sustainability, and community empowerment. And in a lot of ways, it isn't not those things. Like, a lot of those components are genuine. A lot of them are just also being used for weird ends that aren't being communicated in a forthright way. And it may have more sinister implications for humanity regarding freedom, real wellness, like actual health and wellness, and privacy. Like, imagine a time where health and wellness data is not fed into AI all the time. Imagine a time where health and wellness are not institutionally promoted solely for the purpose of getting the data. Or if health and wellness are promoted institutionally, there's also always a data component. And the Eye of Sauron and Jacob's Ladder may represent the same thing. So we're beginning book 2 in a 4-book series of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. And this particular Jupiter-Saturn cycle kicked off a triplicity shift, which means the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions are no longer taking place in Earth signs, they're taking place in air signs. So the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in Earth signs were like the Industrial Revolution, and that's a 200-year cycle. So just the top layer of this is things are not going to look like what you or even your recent ancestors, like your great-great-great-grandparents, are used to seeing. Paradigms that we've been used to for a while, that we were born into, that are accepted as the way things are not moving forward. I remember in 2020, before Elon Musk became like the officially unhinged member of the tech lords cast, by cast in a cast of characters, not cast as in class system, although I think that applies. He tweeted something that was like, it was very narrative and kind of poetic. It was in 2020, and it was about this coronation or wedding or something that happened amongst the aristocracy in Europe. And it was kind of like, the way he ended it was like, it was the last time all of these leaders would gather. And what it seemed to talk about was like, that was the end of aristocracies and monarchy style government, and it was the beginning of these democracies that are surreptitiously run by business interests. Business interests are always like a part of everything, but it was this weird tweet in 2020 about a major paradigm shift, and now I wonder if that was like the beginning of the Earth triplicity, actually. I can't believe I've never looked into that. So anyway, things aren't going to look like what any of your recent ancestors were used to. And the term decentralization that's being thrown around a lot, that term on its own, not tied to blockchain or anything, is a big part of it. This is the air triplicity. So things are kind of all over the place. Results and damage and benefit will be now more all over the place than ever before. Decentralization, this frame that keeps getting this word that keeps getting repeated, mostly it's talking about blockchain. And I got into the upload just before this one, my last week's. If you're watching this later, it's the upload just before this one. But my video last week, I talk about decentralization and what that means. People normally take that to mean something about governance, like how there's not like a central authority. And that can be true with blockchain, but mostly what that means, like decentralized finance, it's like finance on an indestructible decentralized ledger. Like it just means that the computers that house the data are many. So if one cluster of computers gets destroyed, the data is still there. That's all that means. It doesn't have to mean this like utopian, democratic ideal. It can, but it seldom does. Anyway, a quick timeline of the era that I'm talking about. The triplicity shift is 200 years. So December 2020, 200 years before that, that was Jupiter and Saturn conjoining in Earth signs. And December 19th, 2020 marked the beginning of the air triplicity officially. And that's 200 years. So think about that. In December 2020, we began like a 200-year whole new era, and that was Jupiter and Saturn conjoining in Aquarius. So two new kind of eras began with that conjunction. It's the 200-year air triplicity, which is like Jupiter and Saturn world building together. Like the way the world works is like an air sign paradigm. It's more like informational and scattered and cerebral, and in some ways possibly more dramatic, because we don't have the stability of the earth signs, like building upon building. That's not what's happening now. Now it's just like, I heard a woman talking in a memes and money panel from the Consensus blockchain conference in Austin this spring. That's what I do in my spare time. I watch conference talks. This woman said something along the lines of, I don't want to get rich, I don't want to build things for years, I want to get rich in 15 minutes. And that's something that's absolutely available right now, like because of all the volatility with crypto and the ease with which the retail customer can enter into day trading. That's totally possible, and that's very much the air triplicity. So that's a 200-year thing. Now I'm talking about Jupiter squaring Saturn, and that is a part of a 20-year cycle. Jupiter conjoins Saturn every 20 years. So right now we're in a 20-year bracket of time marked by Jupiter conjoining Saturn at 0 Aquarius in 2020. And then the next Jupiter-Saturn conjunction will be in the sign of Libra at 17 degrees of Libra in 2040. So this is the first 20 years of a 200-year thing. So that's where we're situated in time for this video. And then there are 4 chapters of this. If you're just talking about axial alignments of Jupiter with Saturn, so none of the sextiles or trines, I'm just talking about conjunction, opposition, square. It's like the Richard Tarnas way. So the waxing square is what we're in now, and that's what this video is about. That will happen 3 times because of Jupiter and Saturn's retrograde phases. That's right now, August 19th, Jupiter in Gemini squaring Saturn in Pisces, and then Christmas Eve 2024, December 24th, 2024, Jupiter in Gemini squaring Saturn in Pisces. And those both happen in the middle of each sign, so like the middle 10 degrees. And then the last part of this Jupiter square Saturn, like the opening square of this 20-year period, is June 15th, 2025. And that will be in the signs Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn in Aries. So then there's the opposition later, and that's 2029 through 2031. There'll be 5 exact oppositions. So a little bit more drawn out. And those will happen in Scorpio and Taurus, and in Sagittarius and Gemini. I'm giving you too much information. So then the waning square chapter, which is like the beginning of the last chapter, will be in 2035, 2036. And then we'll have the next Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Libra in 2040. So this is book 2 of a 4-book series. Or we could say we're ending chapter 1. We're beginning chapter 2. So first, what is it about? What was the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction? What was December, the end of December 2020 about? Just think of all the things happening during that time and all of their implications as they played out until right now. So now we're just talking about these 3 squares of Jupiter in Gemini squaring Saturn in Pisces, and then Jupiter in Cancer squaring Saturn in Aries. The quality of each time, like the basic gist, is that the first 2 are about one thing, and then the last thing is about something else. Saturn is with Neptune, and Neptune pertains to deception. As far as like how the world is changing and how the world is taking shape around us as we fall through time in a human body together. The first 2 are like, the world is shaping like this, and then the last one, next summer, is like, this is what it really is. And for that reason, I think it's interesting that the first 2 sort of constellate around the election in the United States. I know a lot of stuff is happening in Europe, and Europe is like a huge stage for everything I'm talking about in all my videos. But I'm in the United States, so I can't help but constellate my discussion around that, because it's the United States will hold your head and be like, look at the election, look at it, look at it. And then Frank Zappa said that politics is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex. It's an opportunity to create, it's certainly a campaign, but it's a campaign for your attention, to create like a big to-do around something that doesn't really matter, because your local government stuff matters if you care about that. Your personal relationships matter. You serving the people around you and the people you love, that matters. But this one figurehead leader for like a giant machine, they're a symbol for a giant machine. We will come to understand that both are a symbol, and there's not really going to be a regime change no matter who takes charge. That's not what this is about though. So, and I can imagine like 40 different criticisms of what I just said that don't take a lot of other information into account. I wonder if you could challenge yourself to understand what I just said in a way that works with your ideology. If what I just said were true, what would that have to mean? Anyway, so because this one, the election season is ramping up, and all the dirty tricks that are involved with like trying to gain the public relations upper hand, because that's what it is. And then the last one is like after the election, after everything pans out and all the arguments and the Mars retrograde in Cancer, which will be a separate video. I feel like the first 2 kind of like mind screw, and then the third one at the very beginning of Cancer and Aries, cardinal signs. That one in June of 2025 is what's really going on. Gemini and Pisces are mutable signs. We're like wrapping things up and changing things and headed towards something else. So in what it really is, Jupiter squaring Saturn, shaping the world in chapter 2 of a 4-part, part 2 of a 4-part series that lasts 20 years, is like an objective that's a lot of like major funding and large institutions involved in building something, and you know, maybe a lot of people don't even understand exactly what they're building. Technology, finance, health, environmental initiatives converge into a complex system of data harvesting, monitoring, and control. I think there'll be like, definitely, we're in an air triplicity, not an earth triplicity, so it's not like the iron-fisted panopticon forever. It's some nodes of this will be like really cold and controlling and constrictive, and some will be like feel really free, but like then your data's going to like somewhere weird, and you don't know that like your aura is you've been aura maxing, but your aura is, I don't care if that, like, God, it's 2 minutes. I think it's a really important term. Aura has been like monitored by some like investment banking firm. Do you want that? You at least maybe want to know that's what's happening if you're like a Reiki practitioner who's signing up to make it so that people's health insurance can cover their energy healing session. Or that if you want to legally operate as an energy healer, you have to get credentialed in the same way that a doctor does. And then it's don't trust, verify, and then you've eliminated natural trust from your system of finding a good healthcare practitioner who is an energy healer, which is cool in one way, but in another way, it outsources the trust. And I say this from a viewpoint of, I had this naive experience when I first got my own really good health insurance. I had like a very minor like skin problem, and I was like, I'm gonna go see the doctor because I have really good health insurance, and I chose a name from a list because that's the only way you can research everybody and call them. But I don't know, I had a full-time job, so I chose a name from a list and I went to see her, and she was like so not helpful. She was the opposite of helpful. She basically just prescribed a weird chemical. Now, many years later, I understand the types of questions I wanted her to ask me, and she did it. And she had a PhD. So that's going to happen with energy healers. They're going to become like useless cogs indoctrinated into a system where they follow a protocol, and they don't really heal the whole person by paying attention to them. And it's not built on real, true meat-space relationships. Like, I know energy healers. I know them. I don't give a shit if they're, like, credentialed properly. I know that they're right for me. So that it's taking that out of, I'm on a tirade. Anyway, there's weird stuff happening with infrastructure and healing and the optimism of new technology and making things feel small and local, even though they're, like, a part of great hulking data vacuums to train a giant superorganism, AGI. This is going to be a long video. By the 2040 Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, I think a lot of it crumbles. It's not like everyone in the world is living in a panopticon that's feeding a giant outside-in robot that is truly like the epitome of the Aquarian giant, and we are doomed to live that way forever. Everything's going to be really chaotic, and a lot of that is going to break and not work out. But we can see, if we go back and look at the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius and what was happening around then, what was rolling out, and the things rolling out around it, the administrative requirements encompassing it, you can see the theme that's going through this time. Even though it's a really volatile time when a lot of stuff, a lot of paradigms we rely upon, like big ones about our reality, are going to crumble to dust. In the midst of it, we have this weird data system that is basically what blockchain is for. So who is it driven by? Like, all of this, the utility of blockchain is not really for the user so much. There are definitely things about it that are for the user, but a lot of it is also, there's a tweet I talked about in my video last week, the previous upload, where someone was like, why is Poly Market on blockchain? It doesn't need to be on blockchain. The utility is completely outside of it being on blockchain. And I disagree. It's very useful for the people who developed and invested in Polymarket to put it on blockchain. I'm digressing. Anyway, so who's running it? Those are important questions. They're just questions. I'm not here to tell you who's running the various technocracies trying to create the Eye of Sauron. Whoever it is, they're using blockchain, tokenization, open source signals intelligence. That's what a part of what tokenization is for, and biosensors. The introduction of biosensors is going to be really important, I think. And all these things are going to both monitor and find ways to influence, like subtly and non-subtly, human behavior, health, and even thought processes. We have that even now with social media swarming. It's like, did I get this idea? Or did I hear it somewhere and I've taken it on as my own thought? And that's a thing in all worlds, even without any internet, obviously, but it's being like exploited. Is even any of this video mine? No. And so why, what's the point of, we need blockchain, we need a permanent ledger, a permanent record of all fluctuations to train AI. You'll notice like the stories of AI is running out of data. If we don't give it fresh data, it will cannibalize itself. We'll lose this wonderful technology. So we began in 2020 with a lot of focus on health. Not so much, are you genuinely healthy? How are you doing? But more, are you sick? And some people were like, their answer was, get out of my face. And some people, their answer was, are you? Are you sick? We need to test you to make sure you're not sick so you don't get me sick. And that was like a setup. So it started asking if you're sick. And then there's a whole like administrative layer around it of proving, don't trust, verify, proving whether or not you are sick or whether or not you are safe to be around other people and not get them sick in various ways. Do you have the disease? Do you have the medical therapy that prevents the disease or cures it? Or I don't remember now. There were a lot of things. Is it therapy? If I say what it really is, then that denies a lot of other things that were said by the same people later about what it is. I don't know what it is. Never mind. So then a whole community rose up in opposition to this. That was like around real wellness. Like as an opposition, no, we don't want any of that. We don't want this sickness paradigm. We don't want this. It was like a stark opposition. So maybe even like more extreme the other way. And a couple of weeks ago, I put up a slide from a study done by Rice University that came out in December of 2019. And it was about like quantum dot tattoos and they were vaccines that would also tattoo you. And it was being suggested for children. Stuff like that, or like, this is your vaccine passport and you're not going to be able to travel without it. Stuff like that, everyone was like, oh no, we don't want that. Get me out of this paradigm of passports and tattoos and you're going to put microchips in me, etc. None of that is necessary. Now there's like the backlash, like the wellness is a backlash now and no longer just a legitimate concern for biology, but this is going to be taken advantage of. And it's a program of managed wellness. So now instead of this is your precision medication made just for you, instead it's going to be this is your precision nutrition. So I'm supposed to do predictions. Part of using astrology for that is to look at the past. December of 2020 gives us a big clue about what the next 200 years are going to be about, and especially starkly or prominently what the next 20 years are going to be about. And in 2020, there was a lot of hope of salvation around something yucky that happened back in the before time for 2020. But if we think about it, it's a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, but it's not, it could be like, if it were in a Jupiter-ruled sign, then it would be Saturn is helping out, creating the administration around the hope and the salvation. This was Jupiter creating hype and a sense of optimism around the administration. So I feel like we could say this 20 years, 2020 to 2040, is about, it's more Saturn-led than Jupiter-led. And everything I'm talking about in here is Saturning around Jupiter stuff. So my prediction is, and it's not just me, like I didn't pull this out of my brain, I pulled this out of looking at the astrology, listening to different people, and coming to a conclusion. Blockchain is not a vector for your freedom. That's not my idea. But looking at the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in 2020 and what's happening now and the things that it's happening around, it's not a vector for your freedom. It's a vector for the creation of an Eye of Sauron. It's like a wisdom of the crowds style superorganism, and it brushes up the ultimate potential of ubiquitous sensing, managed wellness, all the blockchain and crypto stuff, Ethereum. Ultimately, it brushes up against the collective unconscious, space exploration, although that's not. I heard a scientist say that apes in tin cans was never going to work. That's never what outer space exploration was going to be about. It's more inner. And the spirit realm. So that's actually an interesting Jupiter part. It's like the Jupiter thing is not what you think. So that's what's trying to happen. Like a global supercomputer that becomes like a mega giant outside-in robot, super intelligence, weird robot angel being that can tap into the collective unconscious, but it's not maybe going to fully happen because there's a lot of other stuff going on in the world that is going to destroy some of the power structures running all of this. Like I said, this is a long video. So there's a sea changer on wellness as a reaction against perceived medical tyranny. That's one component. And a part of those things are like functional medicine, alternative, quote unquote, alternative medicine, and then permaculture, organic farming. These things are like a reaction against the perceived authoritarianism of 2020. And so biodynamic stuff, weirdly, if you think about Rudolf Steiner and biodynamic farming and all that good stuff about that, there's also weird Rudolf Steiner stuff that like makes him very well known for being problematic and involved with things that could be perceived as eugenics. And that's very interesting for we're like entering a time where like this stuff like permaculture, energy healing, anything regarding wellness, everything regarding the food supply of people who really care about their food, organic food, clean eating, meat farming, whatever, quantifying everything, quantifying and tracking everything. So it doesn't matter if you prefer organic produce or you prefer permaculture. All of that is a part of this. You shop at the normal grocery store and buy conventionally raised whatever, organic nothing, packaged food, great. You buy only organic stuff from a tiny CSA, great. All of it's on blockchain. All of it. You can't escape it. So quantifying everything kind of becomes like biohacking, which can go into eugenics. So there's that. All of this to create an omnipotent stairway to heaven. One component is like the sea change around wellness as a reaction to medical tyranny. The other component is like ubiquitous sensing, trackers in everything. How can they track your body? They don't need to implant a microchip in you. They don't need to hold you down and put something weird in your body or give you a quantum dot tattoo. It's going to be just like smart dust in your organic produce, and then you'll be full of quantum dots and everything can be tracked. So this quantifying everything relating to like you being biohacked and you wanting to biohack yourself and what that even means. And then the other component is like the outside-in robot. Robots are not these like little humanoid things. It's one big global blockchain brain. So like all of the big tech companies have it, but then they need fresh data all the time. Where are they going to get that data? From everyone in the world being tracked. Blockchain is being sold as this amazing freedom thing. Anyway, none of it's probably going to come to full fruition. I'm repeating myself because I'm tired, but like component 1, wellness. Health and wellness as a reaction against medical tyranny. Component 2, ubiquitous sensing, blockchain, open source signals technology, tokenization. Like blockchain just isn't magical freedom money. I keep saying that. And carbon nanotechnology, smart dust, biochar as smart dust. Look at IXO blockchain. It's a Vimeo video, and that's like a proposal. It's from several years ago, but it's like trackers in everything. Okay, that's the basic setup of Jupiter square Saturn. This opening square is like bringing us and how it's shaping our world. So the first two are in Pisces and Gemini. Saturn is in Pisces, Jupiter is in Gemini. They also take place around the election. Pisces can be mysterious and about unseen things. It's about you and then the entire fabric of reality, or the seen and the unseen. These are both double-bodied signs that this is happening in. Saturn in Pisces is the gap junction. That's a biological term for a place in between cells that can do the transfer of ions and other particles, small molecules. Saturn is like this infrastructure being hidden and initiating this transfer between biological boundaries. And then Saturn in Pisces also, to paraphrase from 36 Faces, is concerned with the boundaries between the material and the spiritual. So we're setting up these wires to create this. What is the end goal of artificial intelligence? You think people aren't thinking of that? That it's like to reach the spirit realm, to reach the collective unconscious, to get really super woo? That's what's happening. And Saturn in Pisces is like laying the framework for that, while the election is like dangled in front of you. In Pisces, the boundaries serve to connect through, in this case, business administration, connecting our collective unconscious with business. How? I will talk about that shortly. But making our biology, our consciousness, permeable to receive business, to be organized by technology businesses. And then Jupiter in Gemini is taking on a lot. Jupiter in Gemini is really rooting for blockchain. When Mars went through Gemini this year, 2024, there was like the most harrowing data breach ever of everyone in the country. And then there was the CrowdStrike thing where the entire system was down. Jupiter is going to champion our infrastructure can no longer be safe without changing all the encryption, putting it all on blockchain because it's safer. So Jupiter is like rooting for blockchain, and cryptocurrency is a poster child for blockchain. That's like the main PR. My version of Frank Zappa's quote about how politics is the entertainment division of industry is cryptocurrency is the public relations division of blockchain. So Jupiter is rooting for blockchain, cryptocurrency. There's going to be a lot of volatility around what even money is, especially starting next summer through the next 7 or so years. But especially next summer when you realize you live in the metaverse and the idea of money could be like some weapon you bought in a video game is money. Your Shi-Fi blockchain baddie skill badge is money of some sort. It grants you something. The silver coins you've been hoarding is money. The bag of unpopped popcorn during a famine is money. A bag of flour when all the grocery stores are empty is money. So all this is happening, and it's everything I'm describing is like the pessimistic perspective, but it's also necessary. Like it has to happen right now. We're here for it happening, and there are a lot of parts of it that can be inspiring about like connecting technology to this stuff. It just sucks that it all just becomes data. It's kind of in the way that like we have amazing tools now, but it's like my phone isn't really my tool. My Notion isn't really my tool. It's like shared with a whole other entity. And then the word decentralized is being used very disingenuously. So I guess there's something that I'm going with my gut here, and maybe this isn't full astrology, a little bit, that I find it, the first two Jupiter-Saturn squares, disingenuous. And then the last square of Jupiter with Saturn happens with Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Aries, and that's in June of 2025. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Jupiter in Cancer makes you think of, there was a Sex and the City quote where she was like, if you're good and you work hard, you'll get to go shopping at Barney's, but replace it with Erewhon. So your biological and spiritual and optimism healthometer could have the potential to go way up with Jupiter in Cancer, especially in the parts of life that Cancer in your chart rules, like the house that it rules. But this round of exalted Jupiter in 2025, there's a catch. Fallen Saturn is here to potentially impose something upon us with brute force. This Saturn in Aries it represents the military industrial complex. That's such a Saturn in Aries term to me, and the arm of politics that speaks to that. Like the Frank Zappa quote, politics is the entertainment division of industry, and the industry is tech companies who are your new government, really. They run the governments, their business interests inform heavily most governments, and they run metaverses, which are your new economy, and which Codecademy defines as a group of blockchain utilities coming together for a goal. So what's the goal of the metaverse? That is like, social media is a metaverse. So what's the goal of that? Codecademy defines metaverse as not like just a place, a cool virtual place for you to hang out in. It's blockchain, it's a blockchain something, and it's coming together for a goal. And the rebellion against whatever's being imposed upon us starting next summer will probably be equally as forceful. And then Neptune is also a part of this. Like the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is getting closer. It's not until 2026. But Neptune, a part of this Saturn and Aries story, all of this might dissolve into less distinct structures. There's never someone you can really fight against. I'm positioning, ooh, big tech companies bad, blockchain bad, but ultimately there's a lot of good, interesting stuff coming out of tech companies, and there's never going to be like a clear enemy, because all of them are going to be like, you know, the big venture capital firms who are playing like they're like small and cute, and like it's small technology for the people, and it's warm and fuzzy, and it's also cool and popular culture. Those things will never own up to doing anything nefarious. And I think a lot of people who work there probably don't understand that like a lot of what's going on is kind of like, why isn't it being talked about exactly what blockchain is for? So Jupiter in Cancer, amazing. Saturn in Aries, there's a catch to Jupiter in Cancer. So like your Reiki treatment that your insurance paid for was at a research hospital that put your biofeedback data on a permanent indestructible ledger and maybe didn't even tell you, or maybe it's just on your digital ID, but the gated luxury dorm rooms for adults, condominiums that you want to move into are high vibe only, and they require that they see your biofeedback. And that's the precedent, is since everything's being recorded, there will be a precedent for some entity coming along to view it, even though your digital ID is private, your data is private. And organic produce full of smart dust will track you, track your biology, track your whereabouts. Again, all of this might not fully happen. This is just all stuff that's coming down the pipeline. But we live in this world right now, and it is a time of wonders. You have more important things to worry about than like where your data is going on blockchain. I do too. Like actual physical resources, your spiritual fortitude, and your personal safety. All of this is much more important to worry about. And the other really important thing is foundational chunks of the world as you know it, as your parents knew it, as your grandparents knew it, as your great and great 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 grandparents knew it, are starting to crumble. They'll crumble in your lifetime. And this 20 years, a lot of that plays out more like in books 3 and 4. So we're in book 2. It's just good to understand a little bit more about that, like about that play to earn crypto gaming that you're forced into because there are no jobs. And it's good to at least be aware that those play to earn crypto games partially exist to network your consciousness to train artificial intelligence. Anyway, so let's get back to wellness. There's like the rise of Erewhon. Fancy grocery stores are so Jupiter in Cancer. But I think increasingly, if you want fresh fruits and vegetables that are unadulterated, you're gonna have to go to the absolute fanciest grocery store you can possibly find. and that's Erewhon, so that's not everywhere. And even there, it might not be exactly what you're looking for, exactly the real food that doesn't have anything weird in it. So you're gonna have to either grow it yourself or develop real meat-based relationships with people who do. So the food system will be like a huge contrast between utterly controlled and monitored, even in the organic permacultural sectors, and it will be like artificial trust. Don't trust anyone. Verify. It's like how like USDA organic, some places they just won't spray the crops with the pesticides on the day that the USDA comes to like bless their certification. So we've already been like conditioned to kind of not trust and to just take these credentials. But I do not care about credentials for like, my energy healer. That I find through personal connections. And I think that's the same with my food now. But they're going to be like, oh, here's your Wagyu beef is certified on blockchain. So it'll be tracked that you bought it. It'll be tracked who's buying it, what you bought and when. And it's just like data to feed AI. But who cares? Also, all of this is, I'm raising my fist because I'm obsessed with it and I listen to too much information about it, but also who cares? You have your life to live and people who you love to take care of and yourself to take care of and yourself to work on. And there's so much other stuff besides this. Why are you even watching this? Anyway, everything is turned into a bit of data. Everything is compartmentalized. The whole world is turned into computation, like logic. It's very Aquarius. So you'll play like games that are like connected to finance because there are no jobs. You'll have like your gut tracked because you ate a tomato with like smart dust in it. Every single dynamic, every single idea, every single transaction, everything is a transaction because you live in the metaverse and every interaction is considered a transaction, is loaded as a bit of data so that it can be seen, and then the large tech companies have these giant dashboards that more and more feel more intuitive. So our stomach can be considered a second brain. It has all these connections and nerve endings. That's what your gut feeling is. It's you have an auxiliary brain. So this giant world auxiliary brain is being created, but also you're encouraged to just do gaming, which is reactions. You end up intuiting things in game. And this is cool. Developing intuition is cool. Thinking about like your second brain and like the health of your gut is cool. But all of it is like being promoted and monitored so that the global superintelligence can be more like a second brain for the world, like more like a stomach brain for the world. Like the way AI is being trained, it's not like data sets and journalism and stuff. It's like your biology being tracked so that the giant world robot superintelligence can have a stomach brain and you are one of those nerve endings. And all of this is in hopes that like the AI can have access to our collective unconscious, otherwise could be referred to as the spirit realm. So it can have access to intuitive knowing as opposed to rote computation. So now if you look at something like Polymarket that is on the blockchain and you like found a way to like parse that data in different ways, you are getting like an intuition. So if you're doing that with like multiple crypto gaming entities and feeding those into a dashboard, what are you getting? You're like getting this pulse of the world that starts to not feel so computational. So to recap, Jupiter is squaring Saturn. If you want to know what the whole thing is about, and it's like the beginning of a greater 200-year cycle. This is 1/4 of the first 20 years of a 200-year paradigm of like how the world is. So we have global health and environmental issues addressed through an interconnected system of technology and biology. So before we just had nature, an interconnected system of biology, but now it's an interconnected system of technology and biology. And the biology stuff is hidden. It's not really being talked about very much. And you're going to be educated on this stuff, like Goop, Reality Sandwich, Gaia, the OWN network. These things are going to educate you about gut health and energy healing and how great they are and how they're going to be like tracked and used to teach AI. But that part's probably not going to be really talked about. Soil health is linked to human health, and that's obvious, but soil health will be managed via biotechnology sensors. Uranus in Gemini next summer is also going to spur a lot of this into a more overt place in our culture, but like the enthusiasm and the infrastructure are being built now. Traditional financial systems are replaced by blockchain-based community currency systems. So like there's the whole CBDC thing, and the same thing is just going to be offered but packaged in a different way. So human biology, the big part of Saturn in Pisces, the big part of Jupiter in Cancer. Human biology, particularly the gut microbiome, becomes part of a networked intelligence system. And then instead of medical tyranny or like forcing you to take a medication, even like precision medicine, like we developed a mRNA thing just for your DNA. Instead of all that, it swings the other way, and it's like precision nutrition, food is medicine. These things will be central to health management. And obviously those things are good. I can't argue with like food is medicine, but they'll also be like hijacked in service of something that you may or may not agree with or want to participate in. Online gaming and financial apps, like financial betting apps, which is a form of gaming, serve as conduits for harvesting collective intelligence, or even like ESP-like phenomenon. Open source signals intelligence becomes a way to figure out how to make artificial intelligence like more woo, more able to access the spirit realm. So these systems, they'll be framed as progress towards health and wellness and sustainability. But there are also a lot of ways that they could potentially be forms of widespread, even more widespread than now, monitoring and control. But I don't think this will be like homogenous across the world, even though it may feel like that could be the goal. I think it'll be like spotty because we're in an air triplicity, and it could end up being like a type of guided evolution, which that's like eugenics. Like we're monitoring everything, we're monitoring human potential, we're trying to make the best humans, and we're gonna nudge them in the direction, so therefore nudge humanity in the direction we want to create the best humans. Look at things hooking into things you might not necessarily want to participate in. There are going to be a lot of things you agree with, and especially during this Pluto in Aquarius time of polarization, the line in the sand. If you agree with organic produce, you agree with absolutely every other thing, because if you don't, that means you don't agree with organic produce. And how could you not agree with organic produce or permaculture or wellness or like mental health or energy healing? All these things are good. I'm not saying you should like be like, ooh, energy healing bad at all. I'm saying we should take a look at the infrastructure that's being built. I was listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago where they were talking about blockchain and how there's like very little application layer. It's all just building protocols, and they framed it as we're building these 10-lane highways and there's nothing on them. And the way I listen to all this stuff, I take that statement really seriously. Like it's real. They're building 10-lane highways. There's nothing on them yet. So the direction it could go, which I don't think it's going to go all the way in this direction, is nearly all aspects of human life. Like from finance to health to just like thought, consciousness, are integrated into a single technologically managed system, or like a few different ones if you think of large tech companies. And it's ostensibly for the greater good, but with a lot of potential concerns about like privacy, even though your digital ID is verifiably private, and autonomy, because it's creating a technological, like an artificial animism where the world is talking back to the people who have the dashboards, and they can interact with that and shape the world, and you live in the game that's being shaped. So Jupiter squaring Saturn this time around, I'm calling it managed wellness, and there'll be parts that are good and parts that are weird that you could raise an eyebrow at, especially if you're like in the alternative health world or energy healing world. As I said in the beginning, they're trying to build the Eye of Sauron. In a lot of ways, they already have. They, the them, is large tech companies and in like universities, and they're just like large established entities. We're in an air triplicity, so those, like that chessboard is extremely volatile, and the Eye of Sauron is basically the stomach brain of the giant outside-in robot, a global superintelligence that resembles the Aquarius analogy with a giant. You can watch my Pluto in Aquarius video. I have a playlist. You can watch that. Pluto in Aquarius playlist. It's not a thing to raise your pitchforks at necessarily. It's just being like pushed as a thing that empowers you, that you should be excited about. I think some people will enter into an open air prison paradigm. In some ways, some people already are. In some ways, a lot of people won't be. But it's not a thing to just like raise your fist at and be against. It's a thing to just understand that it's happening, understand what's important in your own life. Look at the places like Gemini and Pisces, Cancer and Aries in your own chart, what houses those represent, to know where to look to find these coming up in your own life, and chop wood and carry water. Please click like. It's basically a tip jar. I don't actually get money, but it helps everything. And it won't at all be factored into your permanent record and somehow affect what school your children get into.